Hi there! So this module is going to be about traditional medicine and knowledge. People did not want to recognize the Indigenous knowledge and how important and vital it is. And then we go as far as appropriating this knowledge, such as like the use of digoxin, which is a medication that is common in not common, but it's used in healthcare settings, and it actually comes from the plant foxglove. Don't ever eat foxglove, it is very poisonous, but it's interesting because none of these, the stories, the traditional knowledge, ceremonies that will go along with all this knowledge have been taken, but just parts of the knowledge without even recognizing or giving credit to the Indigenous knowledge. But moving on a more positive note, land is a super huge part of Indigenous identity, and it's a huge part of traditional medicine and healing, and a lot of that was passed down through language, which Violet is going to chat about a little bit.
Awesome. And language is, in Indigenous languages, was not only to get the message across, but to thoroughly comprehend and understand. So in Indigenous, various Indigenous languages, they recognize the importance of it not being noun-based.
Yeah, so I'm going to read this beautiful quote from the woman who wrote Braiding Sweetgrass, an amazing book I recommend. Her name is Robin Walkimer. So she says, "English is a noun-based language, somehow appropriate to culture so obsessed with things." So there's things that get lost in translation, and since medicine is passed down through oral language, it is lost due to colonization and a loss of language.
So throughout history, various groups of Indigenous people, they'd pass down a lot of their knowledge through oral history. There wasn't an emphasis, like in Western knowledge, to have everything written down. A lot of it was told through stories, and in very sophisticated ways. There was various dancing, songs, ceremonies that all stem from the language, all stem from the language of the land, that particular region, to help fully comprehend a message. And even within this, there was different stories that were told in the language that would only be told at a particular time of the year, and just the centering around societies of the creation of oral traditions based off everything in their environment around them. And a lot of Indigenous culture is held by the language, it's held by the ceremonies, it's held by the beautiful ways that various languages emphasize something, or how they describe something, how they view it as various living beings.
Awesome. Thanks for touching on that, Pat. We're now going to talk about a wellness model created by the BC First Nations Health Authority. I want to recognize that there's so many nations that live throughout BC, throughout Canada, and it cannot possibly encompass every single one's perspective, but it is something that we can look at, and there is proof that incorporating Indigenous ways of being and knowing into health will improve the health of Indigenous people. So when looking at it, we can see that the center has human being, but also I want to really emphasize that also can include community, because as individuals taking responsibility and that sort of thing, we support our communities, we are our communities. You can look at the next ring and kind of see some really important aspects and facets of health. Then when you look at the third circle, that is the next yellow one, you can see the values that kind of support and uphold wellness. And then in the fourth one, you can see the places and people from where somebody might come from. And then the fifth circle, which is the blue one, are kind of the determinants of well-being. So take a look at it, consider it. It's kind of an interesting thing. Again, there's so many other different ways to look at things, but this is a really good model to start with.
And we encourage you to add and make your own wellness model of what that looks for you and what that looks for your circle right now of where you're at, and like where you're at in your schooling, where you're at your home life, where you're at with your connection to the land. Like just start thinking about those things.
Yeah. And we also want to talk about two-eyed seeing.
So two-eyed seeing is an Indigenous methodology to frame ways of looking at things. So this can be used like personally, this can be used like in classrooms, in communities, and it has been used in research across like Turtle Island. So what it is Mi'kmaq elder Albert Marshall coined this term, and it's two-eyed seeing. It's to see with one eye the strengths and beauty of Indigenous ways of knowing, and from the other eye to see with Western perspectives and the strength of ways of knowing. So together, when two eyes are combined, you see the picture that incorporates both ways for the betterment of all people.
Yeah. So it's super important bringing in traditional health medicine and Western medicine. They both have their strengths and just world views coming together, and that can be used in research in health. And even just integrating that into our own ways that we view and see the world.
Now Ever is going to share a poem on two-eyed seeing. And who's it by?
It's by Rebecca Thomas, and as part of the poem, I also encourage you to check her TED Talk out on YouTube. Here we go. We were never meant to be static. Like the rivers around us, we shift and change and remain dynamic. We bring something to the table that is able to change your worldview and show you what we are capable of. That a lot can come from a holistic concept of the earth. You are not a plague, nor we a curse, or a problem in need of a solution. And we've got to rid ourselves of the spiritual dissolution, the dilution of our treaties written to share this land. And I ask that you understand that we are the experts in what we need. Don't feed us your good intentions. Carefully laid apologies will not get you a historical exemption. We plan our actions for the next 7 generations, and we ask you to do the same. Open your other set of eyes, take a pause, and start breathing. Welcome to the world of two-eyed seeing. It is such a beautiful, beautiful poem.
With many beautiful things and words to like reflect on and what that means to you.
Yeah, and you can always check out the full poem by Googling it as well. So now we're going to talk a little bit about traditional health practices. It can be through ceremonies, through plant medicine, which is what we're going to focus on, drumming, singing, so many different things. And we encourage you, if you have the opportunity, to consult an elder about different practices. If you want to participate in ceremony when it's appropriate, consult an elder. So I also want to share this quote found in the Braiding Sweetgrass book. Once again, it's by her friend Hazel, and it says, "There ain't no hurt the woods don't have medicine for." I think that this is also a really great quote. So knowledge of medicinal plants has been transferred from generation to generation through oral teachings. And again, this is another part of why colonization has impacted Indigenous people, because when we lose language, we lose knowledge, and when we lose knowledge, we lose medicine. So that's really important to reflect on. A huge part also is that there's extinction of plant species that can and will happen if we continue to extract resources from land. Indigenous people are often trying to protect land from these, so to support Indigenous people in that endeavor is very important. This includes, if they aren't wanting a pipeline through a certain area, if they're protesting mining,
protesting fish farming, standing up for their roads to not be developed anymore, standing up for their inherent rights to fish and gather lobster.
Absolutely. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about harvesting, but we don't encourage you to go harvesting, but it's important to see how land is important to Indigenous people. So when again, this is coming from braiding sweetgrass. When collecting or harvesting a plant, first of all, you never take the first plant that you see, or like collection of plants that you see, and you never take the last that you see. You introduce yourself, you say, hey, how are you, you know, and they may have forgotten who you are, which is why you introduce yourself, and you say your reasoning for being there. And if you choose to harvest, you will first ask, hey, I'm hoping to harvest you for medicine, and, you know, saying in whichever way comes from the heart. And then you need to listen. It's so important, because you will feel in your body, and you will also know in your mind if you should be collecting a plant. As the lady who wrote Braiding Sweetgrass says, she's kind of using both her left and right mind, knowing that, oh, this species or this population actually seems like it's not big enough for me to harvest. So that's kind of using like different areas of the brain while also using the heart. And it's so important to also, once you listen and if you harvest, to give tobacco back to the land. Reciprocity is so, so important.
And this is like our different ways that we're in relation, and we relate to our plant relatives, and how we show them respect, and how we show them kindness, and how we show them offering. Just how, same as how you would approach an elder, you would introduce yourselves, you would offer medicine towards them for their teachings, you would, so these are different things that you can do to, you know, show respect.
Yeah, and it's important to give thanks to the land, to the plants. So, so very important. So within your booklet that we've provided you, there are some different things on plant identification, and also on specific plants that you'll find in Silk's territory, particularly in Mission. We are not encouraging you to harvest, we're encouraging you to go and be with the land, to sit with it. I know it may be winter by the time that you're watching this, but that doesn't mean that you can't keep this booklet for later and still also experience land in a different form. So like one plant I'm going to highlight is wild rose. So rose hips were used because they were super high in vitamin C, and when the settlers came, the indigenous people actually saved them from scurvy by giving them rose hips. Yeah, so you know, there's different things. Also, indigenous people are also going to know that the seeds on the inside of the rose hips, they can cause an itchy bum. So you know, there's some different things that you're going to want to know about, or that like indigenous people know about plant medicine. They know how it can help and how it might hinder, and when to use it, what times of the years to harvest. They're in tune with the seasons and that sort of thing when they're living in their traditional lifestyles and ways of being. So that kind of wraps up our module.
Yeah.
And we hope that you explore this more, consult elders, and just, you know, sit and be with the land.